It's the Roundtable with Paul Black. In the seats are Chuckie Singh, evangelist for Ethical Capitalism, and Juliet, Shelley, chair of Democracy Now! And well-known pro-capitalist speaker. And now your host, Paul Black. Thank you, and welcome to the Roundtable. Our topic for tonight is ethical capitalism. And I'd like to start with you, Dr. Singh, if that's okay. For those listening who don't know, can you give a brief summary of what that term means to you?
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here. Ethical capitalism is simple. Make better choices. You've worked hard for your money. Why waste it on things you're only buying because some billboard told you it would make you happy? And not just that, look back at all the crap you've ever bought and get rid of the stuff that you bought for the wrong reasons. When you buy something, you're saying something about yourself. You're actively choosing to show support for that thing and how it was made. You're showing that you want to be its sole custodian, preventing others from using it. Maybe even showing it off like you achieved something positive by taking a valued item and hoarding it for yourself.
Now that's interesting. Something you said there, when you say show support, what do you mean by that?
Well, just stop and think about how that item made it there. If it was manufactured, do you agree with the ethics of the company who made it? Do you agree with the way the raw materials were harvested? If it was produce from a farm, do you agree with how the animals were treated? Presumably, the item had to be shipped to a location where you could buy it. How far did it come from? It would save precious commodities like fossil fuels in the ozone if it was produced locally and didn't have to be transported halfway around the planet. And then there's the packaging. Was that made from recyclable materials? Can you recycle them after purchase, or is it just going to end up another problem for mankind to clean up in the future? And that goes for everything you do. Any crap you buy will most likely be thrown out, so don't buy stuff you don't need. Don't just buy things because some marketing company told you it would make you a better person.
But Mr. Singh, surely there is an argument to be made for art and books and entertainment. Life has to be about more than simple survival. Where is the vigor? Where are all those small things that make you happy?
I'm not saying we need to turn ourselves into monks, Paul, but those things don't need to be owned. Pour that money back into our libraries, galleries and museums. We don't need to be culturally devoid, but we can experience those things without needing to hoard them and preventing others from enjoying them as well. We must avoid the cultural ransom of buying things either from our own selfish desire to be able to experience them whenever we want, preventing others from doing so, or because we think it would be a good investment later when we choose to sell.
Now, you've spoken very vocally in the past about people holding art to ransom, but surely some people feel an altruistic need to save art, shepherding it until it can be safely passed on to another like-minded individual. I know many museums simply don't have the space or resources to display all the art they have now, let alone all the art that hangs in people's homes.
But if we gave more money to the arts, to museums and galleries, that would no longer be true. And I'm not trying to say that our homes must be free of all aesthetic beauty. That's not what ethical capitalism is about. Feeling fulfilled is a big part of this. It's not just about living a Spartan life and being more responsible with our spending choices. We fundamentally believe that our current lives are unhappy because they're focused on the acquisition of things. But true happiness comes from internal self-fulfillment, not external gratification. One of our big pushes at the moment is advocating that employers allow their employees to only work 3 days a week, then spend the rest of that time doing something they enjoy without worrying about their survival.
Sorry, Paul, I need to butt in.
I haven't finished.
I'm sorry, but
please, I would like to finish.
I can understand some of the moral principles involved here, but you're just completely out of touch with reality.
Well, that is just insulting.
Okay, please. Thank you. Now, I know you have more to say, Mr. Singh, but this is a short program, and I think we understand the essential points of what you're trying to put over. So I would like to hear from Miss Shelley now, please. Miss Shelley?
Thank you, Paul. Now, as I said, I can understand that people are dissatisfied with corporate greed and the general mismanagement of the planet's resources in the name of immediate profit over long-term sustainability. I would love to live in a world where we, as a society, were able to focus on these long-term issues and simply not worry about our immediate gratification. But the problem is that we are not mature enough as a society yet, and we need to take things slowly to maintain order and prevent a complete collapse. When Mr. Singh starts to go beyond mere consumer choice and into areas of corporate policy and enforcing dictum on employers, he must surely realise that this is neither practical nor ethical. You can argue all you want for more shared ownership of resources, but that is not the society we have. People have worked hard to attain the things they own, and it simply isn't right for us to now say that their life's work was all for nothing, and we should just get rid of all the comfort they've acquired as part of the payoff for the work. I mean, the last point particularly bothers me.
About the employers allowing for the reduced work week.
Exactly, Paul. This is simply unethical. You cannot tell someone that they must allow their employees such excessive amounts of time off. Many companies can't survive a 3-day week.
Well, that's just a naive look at the problem. The employees would not be paid for their time off, and other employees would work on those days. There would be twice the workforce, but the same amount spent in payroll. It actually allows for less downtime than there is now, as the average work week is 5 days, and our solution is for 6.
Now, I take issue with that, Mr. Singh. There are many positions and companies that simply cannot be operated by 2 people. The handovers required are wasteful on time, and many people like to deal with the person they know. Business has always operated that way. You talk about there being less downtime, but that simply isn't true when people want to deal with specific individuals, which is often the case.
But you're seeing it through the eyes of our current constructs of business. You have to remember that every company would be operating the same way. We would learn to adapt to these situations because everyone would be doing it. No one would be disadvantaged. Our studies also show that productivity would be increased because the employees would be happier working less hours and feeling more fulfilled in their spare time.
You say that, Mr. Singh, but what about the people that are all about the job? Are you going to force them to work on hobbies they don't enjoy when all they really want to do is be at work?
No, of course not. If that's what they really want to do, then that's fine.
But then how will other employees compete with them to get raises and more responsibility? To prove their worth and be rewarded for it through better pay, more benefits, or more rewarding work? I mean, even people who don't especially enjoy their job might still feel the need for validation that what they do is appreciated, and those are the ways that such appreciation is shown. But if you have some employees working full out, how can the employer help but favour them? Surely the people you're talking about being more fulfilled and happy in their private lives will feel significantly less fulfilled at work, making them less productive.
I don't think that's going to be as significant a problem as you're implying. I really feel that most people will embrace the 3-day work week and find passions in themselves that they perhaps never knew were there before. I'm not saying there won't be a few that really enjoy working, but then maybe they should be rewarded more for that. If it was the case that the majority were like that and only a few took the 3-day week, then, I admit you might be right, but I think the workaholics will be in the very small minority, so I don't think it will lead to the unhappiness at work which you're postulating. What it comes down to is that humankind should totally be able to survive on a 3-day work week by now. We have the technology to automate many of the processes that are required for our survival. Over 100 years ago, they were predicting a 3-day work week because of automation, but it has increased consumerism that has put that out the window. The race for profit has created a culture of consumerism and a whole industry to continually create new merchandise, not for the betterment of our species, not for the betterment of our happiness, and not simply because we enjoy creating things. It was a business decision that sacrificed the lifestyle we should have been entitled to years ago and the happiness that comes with it.
You talk about people making choices, Mr. Singh, but doesn't that point just prove that we as a society chose to live this way?
Perhaps we did, but the consequences couldn't have been seen. It doesn't take a genius to step back now and see what a mess it's all become. But now we're all being brainwashed and told not to take that step back. It gets harder and harder to make the correct choice because the status quo is shoved down our throats as too important to risk stalling. The engine of society needs to stall. We need to restart it with the hindsight that we have gained.
These are very interesting points from both sides, but I'd like to turn to other things if I can. There are questions coming in from our listeners, and the most popular one is concerning inheritance under ethical capitalism. Now, am I correct, Mr. Singh, in saying that you believe inheritance should be abolished entirely?
Yes, again, this comes back to hoarding and trying to feel fulfilled through external means. Surviving on money you did not earn and hoarding items of value for a further generation is bad for us as individuals and bad for society as a whole.
But surely one of the main reasons people work hard is not simply for their own survival, but the hope that their offspring will not have to work as hard as they did.
In the old system, sure, but in ethical capitalism, it is only about working as hard as is needed in order to personally be fulfilled. Most of us are no longer working to survive. We're working to acquire things or to let our children acquire things. If we take away that need, survival doesn't take that much money to achieve. So we work less, enjoy life more, including spending more time with our children, and expect them to do the same and live just as happy a life as we have.
But what about the people who have children who won't be able to work because of a disability? Are they just expected to abandon their children?
Now, this is just more of the smear tactic rhetoric I've come to expect from our detractors. Obviously, ethical capitalism does not want people to abandon their children. It's just nonsense to even suggest that. Since parents will have more time off, they'll be able to spend it looking after their children, much more so than they're currently able to. And ethical capitalism is not against the welfare state. In fact, I personally feel that more money should be put into the welfare state for exactly these kinds of just causes in helping people when they need it.
Okay, I think we should keep moving through these questions. The next one we have is asking whether ethical capitalism is intended to take down corporate culture entirely, or just force it to reshape into something we're more willing to accept.
Well, I would say that's up to the corporations. If they can change their behaviour to be less about greed and stop trying to sell us things we don't need, there could be a place for them in our movement.
I don't want to sound contradictory here, but while I agree that people should be able to run their own companies in their own way, I think that when it gets to the larger issue of destroying the planet and making irresponsible decisions, legalisation should be put in place to limit the decisions that can be made. And I really don't think that goes against what I said earlier, because you might agree with free will, but agree that people shouldn't be allowed to shoot one another on the streets. There are limits to everything. Now, personally, I think corporations do have too much of a negative impact on the world's natural resources, and I think the time is certainly here to step in and deal with that. I would like to think that maybe, as a society, we have the will to make some of the choices that Mr. Singh is talking about to encourage a more moral corporate culture. But I do think that stepping into the psychological or spiritual aspects of ethical capitalism is where things go too far. We need to see that the first part works out and let society go from there.
I can see there is at least some overlap of agreement between the two of you. Are there specific things about corporate policy that you both agree on?
Well, in the addition to the misuse of natural resources, I've heard Mr. Singh speak strongly against the tax loopholes that corporations use to avoid giving money back to society, even when society gives them so much.
Yes, on that point, certainly we both agree, but I'd like to return to the previous question briefly, just to say that consumer choice alone will not be enough, as there are many companies which are not consumer-facing. Corporations are not just a group of evil men deciding how to make the world worse. They are the workers in the companies willing to do whatever they are told. They are the stockholders that demand profit over all else. This is where, as Miss Shelley puts it, the psychology or spiritual aspects of ethical capitalism are so important. If people in the fullness of their lives are happier, then they will pass that on in their work, and that will truly affect these corporations from the bottom up. We must grow a culture of happiness, fulfillment, and societal responsibility. If we do that, the corporations will be made up of people that only want what is best in achieving those goals.
Okay, Well, we're coming to the end of our segment now, so I think we just have a few seconds for each of you to leave a final message to our listeners. Mr. Singh?
The first step is to make those better choices that I spoke about at the beginning. If you're truly honest with yourself, I think you'll agree that it is morally correct to at least do that much.
Thank you very much. And Miss Shelley?
I actually agree with Mr. Singh on that point. It would be nice if people did act that way, but I still think that society has a long way to go before we can be trusted to make such decisions on our own, or be forced to make them without people rioting.
Well, there you have it. The message is out there, and I dare say that only time will tell for ethical capitalism. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.